Make it.
Welcome to Make It with my... I got it.
You're doing great.
I know. I'm right hot now. The sweater on and the heating pad.
Why do you have a heating pad on?
Well, it was cold. It's okay.
Looks great.
Can you see my lap?
Just say the line.
Just a second.
You can see part of your lap, yeah.
Welcome to Make It with Mike and Kristen.
Where creative people talk about
all that shit you gave me.
There's a commercial or a YouTube video of an old couple and he can't get it right. You ever see that? There's this old guy, some old buttery tarts or something.
Yeah, I think
and he tries like a million times. She's like, "What are you doing?" And then she tries and she can't do it. Anyway, let's go.
You didn't get it this time.
I know. That's why you start again.
Welcome to Make It with Mike and Kristen.
Where creative people talk about what they make and what making it means to them.
There.
We got it.
And we are here for our first guest back with the Make It podcast.
And we have a legend in the house today, the one and only Mr. Jimmy Rankin of Rankin Family fame.
I actually had that moment too of sitting in the studio being inside my head, but like there's like Jimmy Rankin's here. There's a Rankin family member here.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
He's done so much. It was impossible to cover it all in an hour-ish. We didn't even get to really talk about his solo career. We talked a lot about just Cape Breton, his upbringing there, just a lot of just small town stuff, which Jimmy's just a small town fellow who happens to be really successful, writes amazing songs, and he at heart is just a good-natured, really nice guy.
I will say that in doing it this way and not getting to all the things that we necessarily had planned, I still learned a lot about him because it was just kind of hanging out, just conversational, and that's how you really get to know somebody's background and upbringing. But felt bad that we didn't really get to highlight all of his achievements that he's had at this stage of his life.
Well, we said at the end we'll do a return episode. We'll come back and we'll dive into maybe the latter part of his career, which is very exciting, and he has so many accomplishments as a solo artist as well. And of course we do talk about that, but a lot of it was kind of really diving into the Rankin family stuff and their Mabou roots. And we got some small town stuff we're representing. You got Cape Breton crew made by Miss Brenna there.
Yes, from the corner store.
Lewisdale Bearco hat. Lewisdale, little town in Cape Breton. I don't know if I'm allowed to say Bearco because it's kind of like a word that they're allowed to say, but...
is that the place?
No, I don't know what it means. If I called someone from Lewisdale a Bearco, they might take it as an insult, but they call themselves that.
And you're Inverness, or what would I be, a Clarencer?
Yeah.
A Valley girl, I guess, is more
but
general.
But Bearco is like, I guess, just a small town nickname, and I don't know what it means.
Okay.
So if anyone else out there has any information on what a Bearco from that part of Cape Breton means,
we'll save that question for Jimmy's return visit.
Yeah, he probably knows. He's a knowledgeable man.
This should actually be a strategy where we kind of just, focus on the past, and then it requires that they come back and hang out with us again.
That's one way if you want them to come back, And all our guests so far, we've wanted to come back. But Jimmy, I'm so glad we got to chat with him. I've crossed paths with him just being a musician and just small talk in the past, but we ran into him in around December. Yeah, it was a Christmas party.
Yeah.
And ran into Jimmy there and just started talking. Like, oh, he's a super nice dude. And invited him to come on. We met a couple guests at that party. Deborah Young, astrologer, there was at that party.
Hosted by Nancy Regan, who is just the ultimate bringer togetherer. So Yeah. Thank you to Nancy for curating that party.
Yeah.
And yes, I see you obsessively pointing at the computer. I have pulled up some of Jimmy's achievements because I would not be able to memorize them all. And I have this line highlighted because
keep
honestly, if you could just point at me a little bit more to remind me that I've done this. So I'm just going to read you this like single line from his bio, but it kind of sums up just what a powerhouse this guy is. With his solo and family band work, Jimmy has thus earned 5 Juno Awards, 7 Canadian Country Music Awards, and a staggering 27 East Coast Music Awards. Like, he'd need a whole house in his room just for awards, no?
That must be... I wonder if anyone has more ECMAs.
I can't imagine who it would be.
I got 5, and I'm pretty happy with that.
It's just, and I know that awards are not everything, but I don't know, he's just one of these people that feels like he was born into the right life. Like he was meant to just do exactly what he's doing, and he still has a love for it and a passion. And, he was in here kind of tinkering around with your guitars.
He played the guitar the whole episode, you'll see.
Yeah, just so much joy and respect for what he does and the people around him, his fans, his community, his fellow musicians. Like there's just a real something about him.
And yeah, my favorite thing about this whole chat is just how small town Jimmy still is. He's been around the world, played the biggest stages you can name, and he's referencing people from Mabou that nicknames.
You guys do the classic Cape Breton thing of like, well, Harry, so-and-so. Like, I think every Cape Breton, especially men, do that. Like, you like to reference the full name of people. And
well, you have to because a lot of people have the same. There's so many Ian McDonalds. They all have to have a nickname.
Yeah.
That's kind of the reason.
Fair enough.
But anyway, Jimmy, great guy, historic career. The Rankin Family, one of the biggest bands in Canadian history. Solo career, his first album, Song Dog, huge success. And he's still going strong. He's put out an album 2 years ago, still touring, still writing, still doing this thing.
And he referenced, I don't know if you caught this, but he said he now enjoys doing this kind of long form chat and reflecting on his career. So it felt really special that, we knew that he was doing something that he kind of feels at home to do at this point. So we just appreciate that.
A big chat right off the top we'll get into where we talk about his friendship with Robert Frank, who's one of the most famous photographers alive, who happened to move to Mabou and live close to Jimmy. So we dive into that. He points out a picture up there of one of my literary heroes, Jack Kerouac, who would have been good friends with Robert Frank from the Beat generation. But it's fascinating conversation, and let's get into it.
Let's hear it from the man himself, huh? All right, everybody, enjoy.
Are you tired of paying too much for home and auto insurance only to then have to deal with somebody at a call center? Someone different each time you call who really doesn't understand your needs?
Yes, I'm totally tired of that. But I happen to know the perfect person to solve this issue. Ryan O'Malley with Allstate Insurance has been serving the community here in HRM and across Nova Scotia for years.
I know Ryan too. He provides tailored and customized home and auto insurance plans to help people save money and get the coverage that they need to protect the things that they worked hard for.
He understands the local touch that Nova Scotians love and the service they should expect from an insurance professional. Ryan is also a senior sales agent at Allstate, which means he now has his own dedicated service agent, Carissa, to help better serve his clients. Fancy or what?
And here in Nova Scotia, we know life can throw a few curveballs, like snowstorms in April, a rogue seagull with bad aim, or your drunk cousin backing into your shed again during a backyard lobster boil.
These sound like personal stories, but all very relatable. Thank goodness for friends like Ryan.
Reach out today to get your personalized quote for home and auto insurance. Call 902-210-1293 or email O'Malley, that's ROMALLEY at allstate.ca to speak directly with Ryan. Remember Goosebumps? Nothing like a spooky twist ending to get a kid hooked on reading.
Meanwhile, I was deep in the world of Judy Blume, navigating life, friendship, and all the weird stuff we go through as kids. Books kind of built our creative brains.
And that's why we're so proud to tell you about Halifax Learning, an organization that's been helping Nova Scotian kids build strong literacy skills for over 15 years. They're also this week's sponsor.
Whether it's reading comprehension, fluency, or writing confidence, their evidence-based, research-backed programs get that coveted gold star.
We're talking proven results for learners in grades 1 through 6.
I also want to acknowledge their founder, Sarah Arnold, who is the kindest, most magical, driven human on earth.
Sarah and her team offer a diverse range of expertise spanning education, psychology, and specialized teaching methodologies, empowering learners of all ages and abilities.
Halifax Learning offers both in-person and online clinics, so kids can learn in a way that works best for them, at home in their pajamas or in a classroom with new pals.
And let's not forget, literacy is foundational for creativity. Want to write a song, paint a story, perform a play? You need words. Reading well means making well.
They have 3 local facilities in Halifax Regional Municipality and offer both after-school and summer programs.
Yes, and I know that summer enrollment is happening now.
On your journey to make it, this is where it starts. Reading skills unlock everything from self-expression to creative success.
Halifax Learning believes every child has the potential to thrive. They're giving families the tools to unlock that potential.
If you want your child to grow up loving books, building confidence, and maybe even becoming a future podcast host / musician / gallery owner,
head to halifaxlearning.com. That's HALIFAXLEARNING.com and check it out. Support local learning, support creative futures.
Tom, I did that interview. I think I know the one you're talking about. I had about an hour and a half of sleep, if I'm lucky. I think I was hungover doing that. You look at me.
You didn't have your sleep apnea machine then.
No, I didn't. We were just about to head out doing some dates, and we pulled into Toronto the night before, and that was like heavy in there at way early in the morning.
Yeah. I remember doing breakfast television back in the day, and you get there at like 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
They don't know their audience.
Or Canada AM. And you'd be out doing a gig, you wouldn't even have a voice, and you'd have to be up at 4 in the morning on a half-hour sleep. I don't know if they still do Canada AM. Nobody watches television anymore anyway. But
YouTube AM now.
Yeah. BT, though, those programs are really good. You could plug a show. They started doing them I've done them all over Canada.
Yeah.
And they started doing them, like you could record them like the night before the musical part, when you have a voice and you're not trying to sing it.
Yeah.
Is this interfering with your sound?
No, just play away anytime.
Quite
You
enjoyable,
got 2 Cape
actually.
Bretoners up there on the wall there. Jack and Neil.
Jack and
Yeah.
Neil.
Yeah.
Actually, in Kerouac's first book, Before on the Road, it's not the very popular book, but it's called The Town and the City.
Yeah, that was his first novel.
Yeah.
That never wasn't successful.
Didn't really do afterwards. Once people fell in love with him, they kind of
they went back
found
to
it.
that stuff.
But there is a mention in there because he was a merchant marine, right?
His mother was also French Canadian.
Yeah. And it's like one paragraph where, I don't know, they're coming back from Europe or something, and they stop somewhere and like pull into port, and they yell to the guy on shore or whatever, and he yells back, and they can't understand him, but it's because it's a Cape Bretoner.
Really?
Yeah.
And they think it's a different dialect altogether.
Yeah, like what the hell is this guy saying? But I think he says, we were in, maybe he says Sydney or something, but there's one very brief paragraph in there where he mentions he was in Cape Breton.
You know that Robert Frank, late Robert Frank, who lived right across from my place in Mabou coal mines, I knew him quite well. And June, his wife, just passed away last year at 95. She had the same birthday as my son, August 4th. But Robert chummed around with those
Yeah.
guys, and
The Beat Generation.
yeah, I mean, that was quite
What a
the thing.
crew. She was incredible too. We got to see one of June's collections at the Inverness Arts Center.
Well, that was
actually,
Emily
which-
put that together.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, okay.
all those drawings of
Yeah.
the Cape Bretons. Yeah, I remember well. Yeah, I loved it. She's a great draft person. Yeah.
Did you ever talk shop with Robert?
Yeah, I did actually. Lots, because
Yeah.
we used to go. Well, my buddy Johnny Gillis, who writes for the Orin in Inverness,
Yeah.
he used to. Johnny and I would go in to see him, and June. Like, so I knew them like since the early like the 70s.
Yeah.
First time I met Robert was when we were kids. You're walking to school in a miserable winter morning in
Yeah.
Mabou, going over to the school by the rink. And, a number of times Robert would pick you up in that old Land Rover. That was back in the early 70s. We were just
Yeah.
little kids. And we thought he was like this funny looking guy, hippie, because there were a
Yeah.
lot of hippies back then. And he just picked you up. He'd pick up like three kids or something. My two brothers walking to school. We'd be giggling, snickering,
Yeah.
But years later, Johnny and myself would go see Robert. I remember going to see him with Barry Fraser,
Yeah.
the artist from
Great
Lake
artist,
Annesley, who was
yeah.
a friend of ours who we used to take drawing classes from when we were in high school, and Peter Rankin.
Yeah.
But eventually Johnny and I would go down, and I remember one of the first times we went, he brought out the Americans.
Yeah.
And he said, basically say, this is who I am. And we kind of knew anyway, but I wasn't really familiar with that book.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was his huge, like his breakthrough. And so it was cool. Yeah, I would go in there and talk about art a lot, because they were like at the epicenter of the art world. They were New York artists, and they were very generous with their time and very sympathetic to the local culture.
Yeah.
And go in there and you'd break open the Americans and ask them about photographs and what the hell was going on when you
Yeah.
took that photo. It was very interesting. I wish I had taped it at the time, but just talking about different photographs and what were you doing then, and you get sort of behind the scenes thing for those pictures. But
And was the whole concept of that book that he was just capturing people kind of in their natural elements? Like,
I guess so. He just went across America a number
Yeah.
of times, which people had done at the time. But he just sort of caught the seedier side of life,
Yeah.
the reality of things, but beautifully done. Like the old
Yeah.
jukeboxes in these bars and stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was a beautiful show. Beautiful. I saw the show, the 50th anniversary in Washington. Happened to be in
cool.
Toronto, and I had an invitation. It was fantastic. It was the first time it had been seen as an entire show.
yeah.
All those like for 50 years, and then and it was such a good time. They had. I remember the last photograph is that beautiful shot of I think it's New Mexico. It's just like the straight highway, the line going down, and then there's. I think the last shot was of the car and maybe Pablo, and like the kids and his wife at the time were in the car. It was very lonely, but that was the last shot. And I remember going through the whole show, and then I was like, "Oh, it's just the end." And then I kept walking and it opened up into this whole area where they had all kinds of like people were hanging out and the tables, and just very informal, and people walking around with wine and champagne and hors d'oeuvres, and there was like a jazz band playing way over in the corner, and like very interesting people. There were all these Greenwich Village people. There were people there from Mabou and Nova Scotia, and just friends. And I thought, oh God, there's going to be a lot of the art stars there, but I didn't see. There was nobody there, like no Annie Leibovitz or any of those people. It was just buddies from the village and people that they knew. That's the kind of folks they were. Very cool. Although they did know a lot of people, but yeah, it was very cool. So I was there, Reggie Rankin and myself. Reg? Ian, that's Ian's dad. Ian, former premier.
Yes, for sure.
Reggie's a really good friend of Robert's. If you look in Robert, some of his books, you'll see pictures of Reg.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, Reg and I just met up there and we went to the show. And I liked the show, like the whole thing so much because it had there was media there from all over the world, but it had like letters and stuff and explanations and different paraphernalia from that period of time, like all the people that were, letters with Ginsberg and people like that. But I told Mia we should go to the show because it was I forget where in Washington, not the Smithsonian, but one of those places. And then they had it at they sent us an invitation to go to the opening in New York, and it was MoMA or the Met. Really cool. And same thing. And then they had this after party at some little restaurant, and there was like a bar in the back of the restaurant. And so here, Mia and I are sitting at the bar with Robert and June, and the president of the museum is coming over and very special VIP treatment, buying us drinks and stuff. We're sitting there with Robert and June shooting the shit. It's very cool, but a great show. But I went to our college, and Robert used to come in, and June would come in and do workshops and stuff like resident artists, because they came up in the 70s, and they knew Gary Kennedy and Jerry Ferguson and that crowd. And I think they may have brought them up, but I don't know the history of the relationship. But anyway, Robert would come in. That's where I saw his film on the Rolling Stones.
Oh yeah,
full length.
Cocksucker Blues.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
we can say that.
That was the origin of Cocksucker and Cape Breton.
No. That's where Robert got the word.
Okay, it's the other way around. He was influenced by you guys.
Cocksucker.
Anyway, so June would come up and she'd do workshops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The year I was finished art school, I graduated in 88, and that summer I was home, and my wife was working on Wall Street at that time.
Oh, okay.
And she wasn't my wife, but we were friends because she grew up her summers in Cape Breton. So anyway, I was back and forth to New York. So anyway, I was at the credit union one day, which is beside where the Red Shoe pub is now. That's the credit union, the old credit union. FX Rankin was the boss at the credit union. Old FX, gone now, but I was in there getting some money or whatever I was doing, and in walks Robert, and we had a conversation, and he said, "You want to go to New York? You want to go to New York?" And I said, "Yeah, damn right." And I was actually going to go down a day or two later. He said, I said, "When are you leaving?" "This afternoon. Do you want to go?" I said, "Sure, pick me up." So we drove.
There's a road trip.
I drove to New York with Robert. We drove through the night, and talked about, did I ever talk to him about that stuff? Yeah, all the way down. We just shot the shit about that stuff, and the Rolling Stones, that whole debacle with that. So, and, all the different artists, Walker Evans, and he knew all that crowd.
Yeah.
Like de Kooning, and, like a very, very interesting life. So, Christ, you'd be in at their place, and their door was always open. There was always a cup of tea. They were very hospitable. And I don't know if you were ever in their place.
I never was.
An old-fashioned kitchen with an old Stanley stove or something. They loved this wood stove that they had, and just sit in the kitchen and have tea. And
very Cape Breton.
Very Cape Breton. And people would pop in, and just like locals. And there seemed to be always somebody in there from some exotic part of the world, or, And anyway, so there was always talk about that stuff. And other times he was just talking about local stuff, which was interesting. So,
did you find that people like that in the 70s that were from away brought some of the, like, a flavor of culture to Cape Breton, or was it rather just a sharing of creativity and art?
I think that the people that came there, I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but that generation, which is they're all disappearing now, because there was Rudy Wurlitzer and Philip Glass, and they're all aging.
Richard Serra,
like, he's gone now. And Rudy Wurlitzer and his wife moved back to New York. They sold their place. Yeah. Philip Glass still has a place there, but I don't know how well he is these days, because they came up to Cape Breton as the Mabou mines. Well, there was a bunch of them. I think Wurlitzer was part of that. Alan Arkin was he part of that crowd? And Joan Jonas?
Maybe.
But they came up from New York. I'm not sure about Alan Arkin. I'd never met him, but I know people that knew him. And apparently he was a salt of the earth, that guy. And but they came up, and because all the artists in New York at the time was at the Hamptons they all used to go to.
Yeah.
And that place became very expensive and
It's all
overcrowded.
It's pretty
mansions.
posh now.
Yeah, and it became expensive. It was a haven for artists, and then, but I don't know who discovered Cape Breton, like as a place to go up, and so those people that came up there, the ones that I knew, were very sympathetic to the culture, and they were, they didn't try change things, or I think they just liked the anonymity of the place. That people didn't care about their celebrity, and so, but it was great. They had lots of friends there, people, in the Mabou area, like June and Robert, people, just local people, the fishermen, or anybody would just drop in and always there was a cup of tea and a conversation, and I was talking to the guy in Mabou. I didn't realize it recently, but he lives out west now. But he was saying when he was 15, Robert hired him to, and Dougal would be in his maybe 70s now, perhaps. But he was saying that Robert hired him to do just work around the yard.
Yeah.
And he was 15, right? And so he had this job, and then I think he was saying that Robert even eventually bought him an old car so he could get back and forth. So at that time, early 70s, he said that Robert asked him if he wanted to go on the road with him because he was making that film with the Rolling Stones. and his mom wouldn't have let him go. He was 15.
Probably a good decision that his mom made.
I don't know, because I mean...
I would have loved to go, but for the mother's sake.
That would have changed your life, Dougal. And he wanted to go. He was that kind of personality.
Wow.
And he said it's just his mom was like, my mom wouldn't have let me go, for Christ's sakes, out in the road with the Rolling Stones. I mean, what a great experience. It would have been a game changer.
Man.
But... but it was great for us to go down there, and you could go down and talk shop about art and stuff, because stuff that wasn't available to us, at that time. In the schools, they had just slashed all the art and music programs. So, Christ, I remember when going down to Robert's and June's, and he brought out like a Tom Waits record, and that's like Springsteen records and stuff, and but I realized after that he had done a Tom Waits cover, and
he was involved in
Exile on
a movie that was shot in Cape Breton, Candy Mountain.
Life Ain't No Candy Mountain. Is that the name of it? I remember that.
Candy
My grandmother's in that.
Okay.
No way.
Yeah. Well, all of the old generation, they're pretty much all gone now. If there's any of them alive, I don't know, but. And he knew all of them, and he really, both he and June were really very sympathetic to those people. They were condescending, and he immortalized intentionally all of those people, like Alec Gillis and Stanley Doctor, and my grandmother placed the sick woman in bed, and but they had none of them cared about celebrity. They were just getting paid to be in this film, and they paid me. So, but that was the idea, and so very cool, And so there were all those people a lot of them are in that film, which is very cool.
Well, Cape Breton, like in my eyes, from an outsider at least, Mike would have taken me to Cape Breton for the first time like 15 years ago or more now. And I grew up in the Annapolis Valley, but immediately had this sense of welcoming, but there's creativity everywhere. And it's not that common, at least that I know of in Nova Scotia, to go to these tiny places and just be so overwhelmed and enamored by, the culture of creativity.
Well, I just, I get asked that question all the time. What is it about this part of the world? And I don't know, maybe it's just just it's cultural thing that's carried over through the generations and the centuries, but it's not just the Celtics, it's the Mi'kmaq and the Acadians and everything. So, but around home, we're very proud of our music, and we love music, and art. It's just a big part of art and music's just a very big part of where we come from,
How did music originally come into your life, Jimmy? Obviously, it's in your family's blood. Did your parents play, or what's the story there?
My dad's family, I didn't know this, but they never played professionally. But my dad's family, they're very musical people and sing, and but never played professionally. On my mother's side, I didn't realize that, but my grandmother, Margaret Wright, I have a little old guitar. She probably got at Simpson Sears or something in the 1920s. I don't know, but she was, I was given to me. It's just a little old guitar. But they had a band. They used to play at dances and stuff. And
Glencoe Hall and stuff.
The halls were in Brook Village and those places, and probably house parties. I didn't know that, but one day, and they had in their house, they had an old Heinzman piano and a pump organ. So everybody had those. And my uncle Freddie Wright played the fiddle. And but they were, there was music on both sides of my family. But as far as back as I can remember, my dad and mom loved fiddle music. So there was Dan R. McDonald was next door. That was John Allen Cameron's uncle.
Okay.
He was literally next door. And John Allen's mother lived, next door to us. And Katie Ann would come over to the house. And Dan R. was a prolific Celtic composer, self-taught. And he would come over, and I have just early memories of John Morris, little 9-year-old playing chording with Dan R. And there was always just a piano, instruments, and my older siblings had a band. Everybody seemed to sing, and it was entertainment. And so I was exposed to it back then. So my mom would line us up and rehearse us, and we just, I don't know, we would just sing, and memorize the words and sing. And we'd go out and do those variety concerts around Inverness County in the summertime. And then, of course, it was a Rankin band, and they played for my older siblings, which was Genevieve, who lives in California now, Geraldine, who's passed away, David, who lives in Cape Breton, he played guitar.
I know Dave, doing sound.
And John Morris played bass and of course played fiddle for the sets, and Geraldine played piano, and Raylene sang.
Yeah.
And they played at dances and parties and stuff, but they would play like adult dances. They were just kids, all underage.
But that wasn't the Rankin family at that point.
Well, they were called the Rankin Family.
Okay.
And then they would go out and do concerts and stuff in the summer, like, those like Broad Cove, and sometimes you do a big tour and go over to Port Felix and near Guysborough or something.
Big road trip.
Big road trip. Yeah, that was exciting. And then there was my younger sisters, and we would open the show for them. Like we would do sing songs. And
so there was 2 Rankin family bands at one point. Jeez.
But I just remember being sort of the opening act, and then I remember being the opening act. My mother would dress me up as with a cowboy hat and a vest and a plastic guitar, and I'd sing Stompin' Tom songs and John Denver songs.
Oh, man.
And one year, I must have been 11 or 12, she said, okay, we got all these stuff lined up for the summer. You want to do? I said, no, I can't do that anymore. I was like, no, I didn't. And I started, being self-conscious. And ironically, there's that summer or the summer later, John Morris said to me, and I was probably 11 or 12, it must have been 12. He said, do you want to play drums for the band? I said, yeah, sure. And never having played drums before. And we've got a gig tonight. There's a wedding at the hall. You want to play it? I said, sure. So they had this old crappy kit that had been sitting in the living room. I think they bought it in Port Hood for $100, and it was just like, it was vintage garbage. Yeah. And that's what I played. I started playing on that, and John Morris said, right before every song, he said, okay, here's the beat, hit the kick and drums, and every now and then hit a cymbal. And so that was my thing.
And now you're a drummer.
But you know what?
First time playing's at a gig. That's impressive.
Well, exactly. And I liked it, and they paid me $40, and I was like, oh, shit, I'm in. I like this. And I didn't have to be out front because I didn't like being out front. But I did that for years. We were busy all summer. And
you played drums in the band for years?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
I'm the original drummer.
Oh, okay.
And you can actually see me playing drums online and stuff.
Yeah.
With later Rankin stuff. But that's where I started playing drums. And then in my teens, I got interested in guitar.
Yeah.
And then during college, that's when I started playing guitar all the time, when I should have been going to classes.
Yeah.
I bought a guitar at Folklore Center with a bursary, And I was just like playing all the time. And there was a group of like a gang of, guys. Everybody's playing Neil Young songs and all that. And I grew up with all of those records, like not just traditional music. But I had older siblings, and we had all the pop records and rock records of the 70s, and then other very interesting records. And I got interested in that, and then I started doing open mics when I was in college and things like that, and then the Rankin band. After when I finished college, I had like a little bit of a hiatus on Pogie in the winter in Cape Breton, playing hockey and drinking
living the
beer,
dream
living
there,
at my
buddy.
mom's.
Proper thing.
And then I think it was that summer we started doing. We did a production for the Summertime Review out of Sydney, and they put it together. And there was the Rankins and some comedians and some skits, and the Rankins primarily, and just what we did at the dance halls, which was play music, like some Celtic music and some traditional music. And at that time, I'd been writing songs in college, so there was 3 or 4 songs that we did arrangements for, and they ended up in that thing. And then that was really, ears started picking up, and that fall we did a record. We went to Toronto and did a record, and that was the first.
You wrote
Rankin.
the songs, obviously. Before
I did,
then.
yeah. And I think three or four of them ended up on the record.
Yeah.
It was called the Rankin Family.
Yeah,
and it was a cassette actually, and very naively, it was, we were basically doing what we did for those. We were a dance hall band, and you play traditional fiddle music for the square sets, and then you'd have a set of we called it round dancing music, and that was anything that made people dance. It could be Celtic music, waltz, and then the end of the night you'd play old rock and roll, and everybody was good and drunk and dancing, and so we just tried to put that on record, but I'd been writing songs, so I just gave all these songs to the band. I had a whole tape full of them, and we just picked several of them. And I don't know if we did any group songs on that record. Anyway, and there was the record featured Celtic, and then like there were several songs. I don't know whose idea it was, but where we recorded it in Toronto, Downsview. Chad Erschik produced it, and it was done in like a week and a half or something. And there were some that we thought were radio playable. So naively enough, we went around to radio, and they're like, "Hey, I don't think so. You couldn't get arrested back in those days. They'd say, go down to Nashville and make a record like such and such, blah blah blah." And we were like, yourself. No, we never said that. But
wait till you leave and then say it.
No, we were just like, really? No one ever. I don't think we ever got really. It was just like, really. That was sort of your introduction to going. We were, I guess, very naive, and it didn't work that way. So we made a second record, and
the first one, I think I read or saw somewhere that you were going into all the stores and trying to get them to, stock the shelves with them.
We got the order of cassettes, and Raylene and I, in an old Toyota Tercel, again very naively, loaded it up with boxes of these cassettes and drove around Cape Breton and basically hawked them to corner stores
hustle culture,
and gas stations, mostly on consignment. But I tell you. It spread like hotcakes, and I don't know who gave them to, like the CBC got a hold of them, got a hold of them or a hold of them, and Jesus, next thing you know, they're being played on CBC and on college radio at the time, right across the country. So my mom's address was on the back, Box 43, Mabou, 945-2889.
So no manager or anything at that point?
His mom.
Well, my mom was, I think, maybe Steve McDonald was working with us from the summertime. Steve just passed away this year or two ago. And but we had advice from people, but it was really grassroots, just finding a way. But the phone started ringing at my mom's place, and but before that, though, my sisters worked with the Summertime Review and the Rise and Follies of Cape Breton, and John Morris was an established Celtic musician who had recorded with and played with a lot of people. So they were sort of doing that, but everybody was at a crossroads at that time, and it was about 1988 or 89. Everybody just seemed to be at this crossroads and finished school and departing on another thing, and we just got together to do this Summertime Review, and it just started snowballing. We made a conscious decision to try it for 5 years and see what we could accomplish. So within that first year, we made 2 recordings, and the band's sound started taking shape. Yeah. And the second recording was called Fare Thee Well, Love. And we tried to feature everybody, equally on the records, and feature Celtic music and, fiddle and piano, which John Morris did, everybody. And there was like a couple of group songs. And
when did the song Fare Thee Well, Love blow up?
Well, that record kicked around for a couple of years, and that's another record that we went around to, like the radio stations, like country radio, and it was like, no, can't play that, And it wasn't until we had an office, like we were selling, like we started just basically selling cassettes by mail order and then taking them, and it was like we were selling a lot of them, like we were making money, which was awesome, And I think record companies, we had an office across the street from Sam the Record Man on Barrington Street in Halifax, because we were all living in Halifax. Yeah. And I would go over, borrow somebody's pickup truck and go over to Dartmouth to one of those warehouses and pick like a whole flat, like a cassette tapes, and then drag them up 4 floors and then drag a bunch over to Sam the Record Man's across the street. So they were selling like crazy. And I think, there were probably people, I don't know, sending music to the record companies, because at that time, the East Coast, you had to move to Toronto. But they saw that there was a lot of money being made. There was money to be made. And also there was something happening, I think, globally with roots music, and there was something happening within Canada. And we just happened to be in the right place at the right time with a good product,
Hey, Kristen, do you know what's awesome?
Theme parks, cotton candy.
Well, yeah, but I was going to say saving money.
Saving money is awesome.
Well, the sponsor of this week's podcast episode, Ryan O'Malley with Allstate Insurance, can help you save money with home and auto insurance.
That sounds fantastic, but I don't like dealing with call centers and talking to like 30 different people.
That's the amazing thing with Ryan. You don't have to deal with a call center. You get to speak with someone local living in Cole Harbour who knows our area, our weather, our vehicles, and our housing needs.
Ooh, I love the sound of this. And with the money we will save through bundling our insurance with Ryan, you can take me to a theme park and buy me cotton candy.
We can buy anything you want with all the money we'll save.
I'm sold. Sign me up. How can I get in touch with Allstate Insurance?
Well, you can call Ryan O'Malley at 902-210-1293 or email romalley@allstate.ca. And he's been a fantastic supporter of local arts in our podcast, so we really give the thumbs up to Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan, for helping Nova Scotians save money while protecting the things that matter to us.
Were you gigging a lot at that time as well?
Yeah, we were starting to play all over the place and get, I remember being at my mom's place and talking about having her phone number on the back of the cassette. And it was box 43 Mabou, and 945-2889 was the number. And like you'd pick up the phone. Remember, everybody had one phone in the kitchen and with the long cord. And hello, you'd be home for whatever. This is the Winnipeg Folk Festival. Or this is Mabou. So is this the Rankin family from Mabou? Because there's so many Rankins in the telephone book. Anyway, we started, getting really busy and playing and just trying to navigate through that.
So your mom was your booking agent, essentially.
She used to do the booking when the band was just playing in Mabou, but I think, probably maybe Ray Leader and John Morris handled it first, and we had somebody, and then it was just sort of learning, and because there wasn't really an infrastructure at home at that time. In Nova Scotia, there were people, but you went to Toronto to get lawyers to work out your record deals and stuff like that. But
I was going to ask about division of labor within the band, because anytime you get that many siblings together, you're going to be
or just people.
Yeah, you're going to be a little bit of butting heads.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. Of course, Christ, trying to figure out the dynamics, and things happened really quick. That record, Fare Thee Well, to answer your question. EMI, like the record companies got interested, and we had to find a lawyer, and we didn't know anything about lawyers. So you'd get a recommendation through somebody in Toronto, through an accounting firm. So, and it was so expensive, people charging you $400 an hour, the kind of thing. It was crazy. Yeah. And so we eventually signed with EMI. And it was a big decision, but I think that was sort of our goal. We had these goals and didn't know how. It was, like I said, there was no roadmap, but it was EMI that Dean Cameron, there was like a bidding war with all these record companies, and because there was a Canadiana thing happening too at the time, and like I said, the thing with roots music and Canada and Canadian music, but they had the infrastructure to get the music on the radio, so they took that second record and I think they released a couple of singles and then released Fare Thee Well Love, which went to Crazy Times, went to number one on AC, Adult Contemporary, country radio, and like the videos did too. That was the time of Much Music where you were making videos. Yeah. And we just happened in on that time, which was great and then like television shows, you could get on the Rita McNeil show and there were all these other little TV productions that we did, like the CBC or these, you'd do a special, the Rankin Family, and, somebody was doing like a document or whatever from Ottawa who worked with CBC and then come down to Cape Breton and film like these shows that would get you across the country out to the Northwest Territories or the Yukon or wherever, all over Canada, and you could get exposure that way. And then when you went to play in these places, you could play halls, and
they already knew you when you landed.
They would,
there,
but it was work, And then when EMI had the infrastructure to get us on radio, and they got us on Adult Contemporary radio, right? And it just that song. And they always work singles, and they knew all the programmers, and so that song went to number one. And like at the time it did, we were making our third record. That was the first record company record under EMI called North Country. Yeah, and like we were really busy at that time though. You're like over touring in England, then you're back in Canada, and then the States and all that, and. But I remember that song was climbing the charts, and the record was like selling like crazy. It was like you could actually make money from your records. Most of it went to the record company, but so that kind of notoriety, that exposure on radio and visually with like videos on Much Music and CMT and all that. Like you could reach a lot of people. Now, as you know, it's internet. Basically, you find your audience and you nurture that audience.
You can find a lot of people, but so can everybody else.
Yeah, like you really have to find your people. There's so much out there.
Narrow in.
Yeah, but then it was, I guess, different. It was on what was on popular radio and the CBC and maybe college radio, and those television shows, like doing those shows would, like I remember that we did a show with, it was like a traveling show, Wayne Rawstad.
On the road again.
I bumped into Wayne in Ottawa a couple of years ago. Anyway, he came to Mabou and filmed us, and we were just really so nice. Just the Rankin Family, and anyway, they interviewed us and played our music and stuff. But those shows would be played all over Canada. And and then they Janet Smith from the CBC, I think she worked with CBC, came and did it was just as things were breaking, did a show called Here Come the Rankins, and it was just they followed us around and shot us in concert and interviewed us and stuff like that. But those shows, man, they would play them over and over again. And then you do Christmas specials and guest on people's shows, and
you're grinding really hard, though, right?
It was very.
You're not
busy.
just sitting there.
No, it was
a
very busy time. And looking back, you're so busy, you don't have time to really, really enjoy the success you're having, or think about it. You're just going. You have to make another record, all that. And I'm not complaining. That's just the way it is, but it happened quickly. We were very fortunate, but you work. It was work. You create your own luck,
You said earlier, Jimmy, that you guys kind of decided, well, we'll give this 5 years. Did you have something in mind that if after those 5 years you were or you were not at a certain point that would change things? Like, did you have a vision of like, okay, well, this is where we need to get?
We had goals, and it was we were just sitting down in a room in somebody's apartment in Halifax with Steve McDonald, Beak, as they called him. And it was a really good idea, man, Beak. And he was sort of guiding us at that time. And I just remember, well, we'd like to go over and play because we had Gaelic and Celtic. We want to go play in the UK and Scotland, the Highlands, and I forget what other, but it was sort of a 5-year goal, which turned into about 10 years. And
what did you envision that success being? Like, I know you're a young guy just out of art school, starting a band with your siblings. Like, what are you picturing? Are you seeing yourself be a band that wins a shitload of Junos and is one of the biggest bands in Canada?
Well, to be quite honest,
sell out the Glencoe Hall. What's the?
Well, to be quite honest, to tell you the truth, I remember growing up as a kid, and like I just really enjoyed playing those. I just enjoyed that those playing at those weddings and dances. I love the energy of it, and I love the fact that, by the end of the night, people would just be dancing, and it was just, and I still carry that in my shows and when I make music. But, local people would always come up when we were kids, and we had, the idea of making a record back then was just so foreign because we didn't have studios, there was the access to actually going into a studio and making a record. But people would say, you guys need to make a record. I remember my uncle saying that. Oh, my Uncle Daniel saying that. You need to make a record. And we're like, yeah. So, but eventually we did, and, but I always knew it was a good thing, because it was really good singing. We just had something that was unique. And just by judging how people responded to the music. And at that time, growing up, we were just doing like covers and Celtic music, and and probably not good covers either because we never rehearsed. So you just get
the show was the rehearsal.
We did hear your drumming story, so.
But it was just people, the music, the sound, the like vocals. Cookie joined the band a year later than I did, and it was the harmonies. Really, like, it became this vocal thing. Raylene was always a great singer, master entertainer. It was just a thing. They knew how to entertain people. And I sat back on the drums for years watching, just playing whatever I was supposed to play.
Yeah.
But it was a great flow. And I still have that formula in my mind when I'm sequencing records or doing a set list. And it's just sort of ingrained in me. But I knew it was good. And before art school, I took a couple of gap years because I didn't know I was such a shitty student at the end of it. I was just floundering. I wasn't, but I was scheduled to go to art school, and I had missed the deadline, so I put it off a year. So I went to Europe and for a year, like London, and hung out there. And that was back in 1983, perhaps. And it was so romantic, reading those guys and being the artist. And and I didn't even own a guitar then. I used to go into guitar shops and you're playing a guitar, just longing for a guitar, and then getting thrown out for staying in too long playing guitars. So anyway, I remember I would just write people, like that was back in letter writing days. So you write letter to friends. And I remember Cookie was the one who brought it up with me. She said, you wrote a letter, and I'm not taking credit, but she said, and I think I was thinking this back then, she said, you wrote a letter on wallpaper, and she said, I suggested that everybody get together and form a band and go out and play like legions and bars and like dances and stuff like that, because it was a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, did I ever envision? I knew it was good, but you never know how good it is. But when we were going around to radio stations back in those days, when we were naively trying to get our songs played and get programmers to play them, I thought it was just as good as anything I was hearing on the radio.
Was there ever a moment where you knew, or that you collectively knew, like, okay, we've done something special here, we've made it?
Yeah, well, when they started giving us awards, like recognizing us nationally, which was really great. I mean, I never take things like that for granted. As I said at the time, you don't have time to appreciate them. But there was the first year, we had just signed with EMI, and we were up for a bunch of Junos, and we all went, we were so excited, and didn't win a damn award, So we were all like, okay, we're never going back to one of these goddamn things again, because they're so political, which they are, by the way. Yeah. And so that next year, that was we were up for like a bunch of awards, and we were like in Europe touring, and we were like, we don't want to go to the Junos. So we went last time and nothing happened. So, and then I heard a story after that Dean Cameron, president of EMI, said, if I have to go over there to Europe and drag them back to Toronto. So that was the year we came back, and we won 4 Junos, and there was some pretty stiff competition. And
you won Entertainer of the Year.
Entertainer of the year. And
that's the biggest award you can basically get in Canadian music.
And I'm sure a lot of East Coast voters who but right across the country, we had reached a lot of people at that point. And I even got an award for Fare Thee Well Love for Song of the Year. Yeah. So
I'd say
that was when, that felt really great. And then thinking, that was easy. But no, not so. It's like, no one said at that time, that because there was no roadmap. So no one said, really, you have about 5 years to pack everything in and make your impact. And we did, but it's like the music business changed in that time. Everything changed. So.
And it's changed how many times since then?
Well, I've seen so many changes. It's unrecognizable now. The only thing that remains the same is getting up on stage and touring and getting from A to B.
Having a good song.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And do you still find joy in that? Like, do you still enjoy, or does it feel, like, does the work feel like work or feel different than it once did?
No, I still love doing it. I hate the business side of it. I really don't. I mean, before I got here, I was that's why it slipped my mind. I was on the phone and sending off emails and putting together this and that. So, I still love to perform. And, when those first records, I don't go back and listen to my records, but every once in a while you'll hear something on the radio or it'll come up, and like, I'm like such a much better musician that I am now, a better singer, kind of a good guitar player. But back then it was just all gut, instinct, whatever, But
that's more important than anything, though.
I think to start out, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't ever leave your bedroom,
Yeah.
But all those years, as a musician, when you started out, all the gigs you have under your belt and all the touring and experience, it's just you become a better musician.
Oh yeah,
a better entertainer, a better performer, better lots of things, and that's something that only experience.
Yeah.
When I started out singing, I mean, I was just coming from playing open mics, and I was doing trios with John Morris and Howie or Dougie McDonald. We'd play at dances and things like that, and I would be like the guy who played in between the fiddle. I was the filler in between fiddle sets, and so that was. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was practicing then, but I still love doing it. I still love entertaining. I kind of even love it more now because I have like a whole back catalog of songs I can pick from. And the advantage of being around a long time and having success on radio, as I can go out and play Rankin stuff now that I wrote or that was performed by the Rankins, and people recognize it. They still do. And the nice thing about that band was that it was like a variety. It was very much like those variety shows in Inverness County back in those days. You'd have somebody singing and then somebody playing fiddle or somebody playing a piano thing. And it was for all ages. And I think that's one of the things about the Rankin band. It was for all ages. And so I get people coming up to me saying, now that this is how long I've been making music, oh, you were my first concert. I saw you with the Rankin Family back at Massey Hall or someplace, and my parents took me there. It was my first concert. This is my baby. This is their first concert. So it's like, but, and that's pretty amazing because we haven't been actively... Longevity, and we haven't actually been out there promoting that music. Yeah. I go out, I've been playing those, like 3 or 4 of those songs since 2001. I always include them in my shows. And if you're lucky enough to have songs that people recognize, play the darn things. But other than that, people still remember those records. They resonated with people. Yeah. So anyway,
I'm curious, Jimmy. A lot of your solo work and even the Rankin Family songs, you're writing about very specific things, like in Mabou, or Cape Breton, but they become these universal things that anyone can relate to, and it's such an amazing thing. And something I try to do is like take something that's really close to me, but create it in a relatable way, so someone in Zimbabwe could listen to it and understand. And I'm curious if that was something that you guys did as a group and you on your own intentionally, or it was just, we're just going to write about Johnny Tulloch and it's going to come out the way we want to come out, and maybe people can relate to it.
Well, I know for me, I think we were all conscious of that. Like those Celtic melodies anyway are timeless. Yeah. And if presented in the right way, they've been around for centuries and sometimes longer. And so if they're if they're presented in the right way and you get it to the right audience, people will get them because they're so infectious. But when we were making records, I know that when I was writing stuff, I wanted to write about my culture, and we wanted to do that because we were very proud of it. And we had integrity. We couldn't be something that we weren't.
And it's what you know.
Exactly, what you know. But we also had a pretty diverse record collection, and grew up listening to AM radio. But also, I had, all my siblings went off to university and they were very aware of pop music. So I remember the first time I heard, some of these songs like Heart of Gold by Neil Young, like when I was just a kid, probably back in 1971 or something. So we were always exposed to that. We had people from New York and these places who knew the Mabou Rankins as the musical Rankins, and they would come and drop off 8 tracks with like pop music and different kinds of music. So, and I had been to art college, by the way. Yeah. So I had that training. Plus, I think we were all just sort of very aware of presenting our music with integrity, but also having for it being accessible to, like you say, people from other places on the planet.
Yeah.
And so when you speak of Johnny Tulloch, which is this,
or the Mull River Shuffle, like
Shuffle,
a lot of them, yeah.
Like Johnny Tulloch, Mull River Shuffle. When Johnny Tulloch, I was probably listening to rap music at that time, you know.
Yeah.
And I had heard the Sex Pistols back when they first came out. Some friends had those records because we were always looking for different kinds of music. But I wanted to make Johnny Tulloch more for rap songs. It's kind of a Celtic rap.
These are the unexpected influences.
Now that you're
of Jimmy
saying
Rankin.
that, it makes perfect
Well,
sense.
it is like it's like, but it's like mouth music. It's a very Celtic thing, you know. Those mouth music, either Gaelic or, you know, you listen to old Clancy Brothers songs. They do these tongue twister songs, and that's kind of where that's coming from. But I remember when we were making that song in the record in the studio in Toronto, and the producer started messing around with little things. I was like, oh shit, let's do that. Like there was little hip hop tricks or rap tricks, but it just stayed very acoustic, which was cool because it's its own thing. But like whoever thought that Mull River Shuffle, you know, like my son goes to college at Harvard in Boston, and he was saying that there's like a frat house there that plays Mull River Shuffle. You know, it's a party song. So
that is a timeless song,
compliment.
though.
Yeah.
That song will never fade.
I hope not, but it's crazy how it just pops up and people play it, and you know, at the end of like nights at the club and stuff, it's the last song.
Yeah.
I would say that about so much of your music, though. Like we went through some of your catalog last night, and just song after song just takes you back to a moment in your life. And I know both of you, because Mike, you and I have talked about this, and it seems like a common recognition as a musician that, of course, you know that somebody anywhere in the world could be listening to one of your songs at any time, and you don't know that. But it feels like such a soundtrack to our lives as Canadians to have the Rankin family. Like,
well, it's true, and I don't say this lightly, because it, for some reason, like those first couple of records and then beyond, but maybe it fills some kind of a gap, but people would take them on road trips with their kids. And maybe it was because I know that the Rankin music, like my sisters, when they sing, kids love to hear their voices, and people would play their music to put their kids to sleep and calm them down, or have them have fun, you know?
Yeah.
So I think they were played on road trips. And so I was out the other night at a restaurant, and I was sitting at the bar having some drinks with some friends, and this young girl who's got Cape Breton, she grew up in Ontario because Cape Breton roots, but she's like 2 generations younger than I am, 2 or 3. And she said, she was telling me, like, your music, you know, it was played. It's very important in my life because it was played at these certain, you know, I have so many great memories with my folks and with family and stuff. So that's very, very heartening to hear. I hear those stories a lot because you know, after my shows and stuff, and I do get a lot of emails, but after my shows, I always go out and sign, and I like to meet people. It's also a way to get your music out there. Like, people will buy your CDs if you sign them, but people will tell you there's always somebody who waits till the end that has a story when you're completely exhausted after traveling and working and not eating all day.
And they want your undivided attention.
Well, it's awesome, though. You hear some great stories, and there's just stories like that, you know.
Sure.
And some of them are sad. Some of them use the music when they listened to the music when they were going through a tough time in life, or it was played at somebody's wedding or a party, and they were such and such an age. So there are a lot of those stories, and always heartening to hear. I never tire of hearing them. It's rewarding, you know. We must have done something right, you know?
And those songs will exist forever. Like, that's
I hope
a beautiful thing.
If there's, you know, if some of them do, that would be awesome, you know, because some music doesn't, it just goes away. But, anyway, fortunately, there's still people listening, and I still play them. I've been playing those songs and people respond to them.
Did it, when you were in the studio crafting these songs, did it feel special in the moment? Like something like the Mull River Shuffle, or were you just doing your thing and this is what came out?
There was, when you that moment in the studio when you hit something and it's really good, and you just know if you get that take, like Fare Thee Well Love, for instance, that was written as a Celtic folk song. I wanted to write it because the band was taking shape, and I wanted to write a song that was Celtic sounding, like a Celtic ballad. I almost envisioned it more as being like sort of a waltz, those Celtic songs you hear, and they're kind of been a wild rover for all, with the sing-along songs and the sad theme. And but that took on a very contemporary feeling in the studio, and that was a combination of, we did pre-production before we went into those recordings, and then the producer, Chad, had an idea, and so basically did a bed track for it, and then Cookie and I sang basically into a mic, the two of us. We needed another song, so I turned it into a duet. I just changed the lyrics a bit, and Cookie and I needed another song, so just remember singing it in the studio, and it was just did several takes of it, and then they edited a version of it. But you knew when you hit something nice, and then when you started, I remember. Back in those times, you'd be doing festivals in the States and stuff, and you'd be singing these songs, and it was like people would just they'd respond to them, and one time, and I'm talking about all of when my sisters were singing, I remember they'd start singing, and people would just sort of come to the stage.
It's almost angelic, really.
Well, yeah, and people would gravitate to hear the voices and the harmonies and hear the music. And like I said, it was music for all different age groups, But I remember one time doing a concert, and years later, people, Fare Thee Well Love, and I'm not harkening on the song, but I have a lot of different stories for people use this song for funerals, and it's a song about saying fare thee well to somebody, really. And I remember, and I didn't realize the impact, but it was early on, and we were doing a festival, and it was raining, and we were on stage, and it was on by the ocean, this festival, and the storm was coming in, and the rain was coming up onto the stage, and they kept moving us back. At the time, we didn't realize how dangerous it is to be on stage. If there's one little short, everybody can get electrocuted. So we just kept on playing, but they kept moving the monitors and the mics back. And I remember there was one girl, and it was like the rain, and people were huddled with their coat. She had a yellow rain jacket on, and I was singing that song. It was like the end of the show, end of her performance. I could see she was crying. I'm like, I'm sorry to make you so sad, but in hindsight, it probably brought back memories, of somebody or something or something. So anyway, yeah, lots of those images and stories. Sorry, what time is it?
It's 2:30.
Oh shit! I have to go soon. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good.
I know.
We're getting.
Mia's going, and I've been. Mia's going to Cape Breton at 3:30. So.
Yeah,
we won't keep. We could talk to you for days, Jimmy,
well, it's
and
fun.
I'm sure we'll spend more time together at some point. But
we should do it again. This was the
this
first
will be a
chapter
sequel,
of Jimmy's
exactly.
life.
Yeah, this is part one. Yes, I would love to explore some of the later years as well, and know that.
Well, for sure. Yeah, I brought you a CD here. I don't know. Do you actually listen to CDs anymore? You should.
We have our car that we got a boost, and hopefully it still works. That's where we listen to our CDs.
That's my latest.
Yeah, sweet.
Great.
So
and
that's
this is Joel Plaskett produced.
Joel, I did my last 2 records with Joel, and this is one of my favorite records I've ever made. Just the way it was made. It's very acoustic. I call it East Coast folk rock.
Yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
We got
you get everything.
I get the gifts.
we got some stuff for you too. But
you don't have to give me anything. But I just brought it out. Yeah. So maybe next time we can talk about what I'm doing now.
Yeah, we didn't get into much of your whole.
That's all right.
We went from 1989 to about 1999 there.
It's been a long time. Shit. Well, I started making records, and before that, I was like playing music from the time I was a little kid.
Yeah.
So 1989, we made our first recording, and then like I've been working in music ever since. So that's
you're still at it and still relevant.
Well,
and
you
still
asked me
hustling,
if I still love it. I still do. I love performing.
Yeah.
And lately, I do a lot of. I've been like at first, like I grew up playing acoustic guitar and stuff, but I really enjoy doing acoustic concerts now.
Like solo or
solo. I want to get to do that. I don't have enough guts to do that. Do a whole 90. I've done it, but to go out and do a tour as a solo guy. But I still take out Jamie Robinson, who's been working with me for years.
Yeah.
He plays multiple instruments and knows my catalog and knows me inside out. So I just love doing shows like that. And sometimes I'll take out an upright bass. And I'm doing a bunch of festivals this summer with band. But I just enjoy going out and talking more and just telling stories about the songs and stuff. And I've gotten better at that because I never used to like talking, about stuff. But it's that's what I enjoy doing. And so.
Well, again, we could honestly talk to you for 10 hours straight, Jimmy, and we appreciate you very much. And
it's nice
what you've given to the East Coast and Canada and the rest of the world musically is amazing, and excited to see what you keep doing because you're still doing it on a high level. And the next episode we'll talk about that stuff.
What was
Chapter 2?
That movie I was thinking about, the Papillon with Steve McQueen. Have you ever watched it?
I don't know
the
that
remake. Oh, it's a great movie. Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman, and it's one of those big epic movies. And Steve McQueen has been in solitary confinement on Devil's Island or somewhere in the French colony and down Latin America or South. I forget where, but he said he pokes his head out the window and his teeth are gone. He said, "I'm still here, you bastards."
I think that's the perfect way to end this episode. Thanks so much, Jimmy. This was just a joy.
Okay, nice to be here. I'll see you again. You guys live out in a great spot, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm envious. You get to your spot in a half an hour from Halifax. It takes me 3.5 hours to get to Mabou. So that's where I'm going. Anyway, nice talking to you.
Yeah, appreciate it so much. Cheers, folks.
Make It with Mike and Kristen is recorded and produced by Michael S. Ryan at Hot Jupiter Sounds.
Intro and outro music by me as well.
Cover art by Emily Rankin at Take Note Graphic Design and photography by Candace Moore.
If you cool cats want to help us out, the best way to spread the word is by telling a friend about us. Tell your mom, tell all your buds. Word of mouth is still the best way to reach people. It's free for you and helps us immensely. And if you're into it, you can like and subscribe and all that stuff too.
Another way to support us is through our Patreon. We have a number of super fun tiers and perks like bonus content, handwritten postcards, creative coaching, and so much more. Find us at patreon.com/Mike and Kristen.
For the makers, the dreamers, and the figuring it outers, have fun trying to make it out there, friends.